Bitcoin was designed to be attacked. Now, not sure if Satoshi Nakamoto understood to the length that Bitcoin would be attacked. I have a feeling that maybe Satoshi, they, he, she did have a feeling. Maybe a reason why Satoshi is not around anymore. Because after the WikiLeaks adventure that took place 10, 11, 12 years ago, Satoshi was no longer. And here we are today, over a decade later. FinCen, JFK, what happened in that time period leading to the Bank Secrecy Act, JFK going against the military-industrial complex, JFK going against the intelligence agencies. I think we all kind of see and kind of put two and two together as to what happened to JFK and why that happened to him. And it's a lesson that people all around the world are going to learn about their own governments, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in Ukraine, whether you see it in the Middle East. There can be many things can be true at the same time. Your government can be doing horrendously awful things, and there's also things that shouldn't be happening at the same time, and bad people doing bad things, right? But those two things aren't mutually exclusive. They can both exist and both be happening, and I think that's something me growing up as a kid, being a military buff, being very involved in politics, being very involved in the money scene the last 20 years, playing at the highest levels of hockey, seeing corruption, seeing the political nature of things at a very high level, whether it was in institutions, whether it was in sports, and really having the mask come off, and then seeing the 08-09 crash happen, and seeing the Uniparty unveil itself, to me, really for the first time, or at least confirming it, I guess. That was the confirmation for me. And then going back around that time and starting to learn over the last 10 years of what happened to JFK. Someone that I wasn't necessarily for, and there were a lot of things that he did that I wasn't a fan of, but, at the end of the day, who is? None of us are perfect. And seeing what happened there, and people all around the world, a country like America, who everyone has their own faults, but a country in America that generally got it right, as I think it was Winston Churchill once said, Americans will, they'll try everything and get it wrong until eventually they do the last thing, which is the right thing finally, which is like the indictment on America, but also more the world too, right? The world's always doing it the wrong way, when America goes through all the wrong instances and then finally finds and does, okay, we're finally gonna do the right thing here. It's kind of the story of life, and that's the story of human beings, the story of cycles, and this is really what's happening now with the JFK 1964 all the way up till now, ridding themselves and really the power structure above, showing a shot across the bow, saying, hey, we have the control, not you, not the president, not Mr. President. You do not have the control. And it led and bled right into the Nixon administration with Ford and all these things that happened, and the Bank Secrecy Act starting in 1964, which is really all of it, saying, well, we need to make sure these bad things aren't happening, so it's for your safety, for your protection. If you've heard that before, a lot of it started there, just like conspiracy theory started. The first time it was really announced in the New York Times was in 1964. People that were trying to look into the JFK situation, and you were labeled a conspiracy theorist. So again, people now 50 years later, 60 years later, seeing the writing on the wall, starting to really uncover, and the scales falling from people's eyes. Unfortunately, it's still not happening fast enough, but it's happening at a faster and faster pace now, as especially the dollar falls apart. And we see the economy start falling apart, and the debt levels that we're at and we're going to have to get to, which is 50 trillion, 100 trillion in debt. We're already at 200 trillion total in 33 and a half trillion, and then you add in 160, 170 trillion in unfunded liabilities. We're at $200 trillion, and that's going to get to a quadrillion, probably in the next 10 to 20 years. It's going to get to a quadrillion in off-balance sheet entitlements and in the things you see as well. We're in a massive heap of trouble, and this attack from FinCen on Bitcoin, trying to literally label you, it's so broad that it basically labels anyone doing anything with Bitcoin. If you're sending money peer-to-peer, if you're sending it from your cold storage wallet to hot wallets or things like that, or hot wallets to your cold wallet, mixing multiple addresses to, again, you can go and trust but verify. My job is not to necessarily give all the details all the time of what a specific thing is. There's many people that are experts in one little area that you can go check out. Matthew Credit does a great job of pointing out and trying to refine each little point. There's obviously many other people out there as well, looking at a bunch of different stuff, articles and things you can go read to get into the really nitty gritty. Obviously Marty Bent and Odell do a great job at TFTC. There's people out there that I'll link to, but trust but verify. I'm here. One of my big mentors is Robert Kiyosaki, and Robert Kiyosaki, one big gripe of him. I'm not Robert Kiyosaki by any means, but my mentality is similar in the sense that people give him crap all the time for the last 25 years. You don't teach us anything. You don't teach us anything. And if you listen to him long enough, I've probably listened to a couple thousand hours of him over the last 10, 12 years, and he does give you things, but his job is really to tell stories. It's really to do, and I need to do a better job of that, but his job is to tell stories and to kind of awaken people and shift their context, so that way people can go then and be moved enough to go put in more content inside their head. And so many people want him to just give the answer, but I found over the years myself, if you're just giving the answer to people, most people, it's like speaking a foreign language. You can't give them the answer because it's not going to make any sense. If I go out there and say the truest things in the world, I'm going to be labeled a conspiracy theorist. I'll be labeled crazy, alt-right, whatever, communist, fascist. I mean, like any label people are going to give you because people aren't ready for it, or they don't have the context in order to understand the content you're giving them, and that's probably one of the biggest things. So the FinCen stuff is really shot across the bow, trying to scare people and fearmonger so that people aren't in it. Because really, one of the big things with Bitcoin is psychological. If people understand that Bitcoin is the hardest money to ever exist, they will leave fiat and they will come to Bitcoin. Well, that's what the government's trying to not have happen. They're trying to have the dollar have strength, but it's not. I mean, they're printing more every day, and they have to. So it eventually will go to zero. As we know, all fiat currencies have a 100% failure rate. So people will continue moving to Bitcoin. They're trying to scare people out of here. But this is like the Patriot Act. Using the Patriot Act, Patriot Act against the Constitution. I was for it 20 years ago as a kid. That's why kids probably shouldn't vote. And I was a neocon, really, at the end of the day. I was a history buff. I wanted to be a Navy SEAL or a fighter pilot. And I ended up playing hockey instead. And this is why 10, 12, 13, 16-year-old kids shouldn't be able to vote. It's because they're not fully formed yet. And I was a neocon, and I wanted us to, wag our stick all over the place and show everyone how tough we were, because that's kind of how I grew up and lived my life. I was a jock. I was bigger than most people. I'd never get in fights unless it was in hockey. But I was a protector of people. I always got in fights to protect someone else on my team. And I was never one starting fights. I didn't instigate fights. That's not my personality. So I was always there to kind of clean things up or protect people. And my wake is very long, and the only time I ever got in someone's face was to protect others. And that's the only time. If you're gonna go after someone, you better come through me first. And I'm a decently big guy, and it was like, hey, if you're gonna sit here and try to talk to this person smaller than me or whatever, like, how dare you? You better come through me first. You're going to have to get through me to get to that person. And so that's where that was my personality. So and everyone's different. But this is a major attack on free speech, on the First Amendment, on your Fourth Amendment, search and seizure of your property. Your money is your time and energy. It's your property. It's yours and yours alone. It's not the government. The government thinks that the money is theirs, but it's not. Not only that, it's not even money. It's currency, as we know. So this is a major attack, and people have to vote not only with their votes, but with their mouth, their wallet, and their feet, and they must, and we must do those things in order to beat back the authoritarians and the tyrants, the despots at our door, trying to take really all of our rights from us. I mean, there's no other way to say it at this point. You feel like it should be obvious, and again, I like I said, when you're speaking that language, and I've studied this for 20 years, you start understanding the language. You have the glasses, the right filters to see things through. If you have a one world government, a communist, Marxist lenses and glasses to be able to see everything through, then everything that's happening makes perfect sense. And again, this is not me. Please read this. These are 20 years of studying these things and other books. The Great Reset, The Great Narrative, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, The Communist Manifesto, Tragedy and Hope, The Committee of 300. I talk about these books a lot because they're the things that have formed me and given me the ability to see very far into the future, because I can see where we're going. And literally left hockey. One of the big reasons 10, 12 years ago was to prepare myself and my family for what was coming, because I could see these things coming. There were major points along the way where you see things coming. This happened. Robert Kiyosaki shares a story of his roommate at the Merchant Marine Academy who was Jewish and was in Germany, and his family left and got out in the 30s, And Robert Kiyosaki told the story before, and they said, why'd you get out? And he's like, well, Hitler was saying all these things, and we were like, yeah, this guy's not going to change. He's going to do what he's saying he's going to do. And he's like, well, what was everyone else doing? And he's like, well, they were just saying like, oh, he'll change, like it'll be okay, like he'll be out in a few years, like it'll, like everything will be all right. We can just do this one thing, we can just pass this bill. Well, we don't need those constitutional rights. Well, we don't need that. A lot of things that are going on right now, obviously. And he said, he's like, well, what happened to all those people that stayed? He's like, yeah, they ended up in camps. And people don't want to think about those things, but we're humans too. Those were humans 100 years ago, and we're humans now. It's like we don't really change that much. Like we're on that trajectory. We're not. I don't think we're. Next year that's going to happen necessarily. But just look at Australia a few years ago. Look at China building camps. It's scary. I mean, like this stuff is tough, and there's a lot that needs to be said. And unfortunately, when you're on some of these platforms, it's tough to kind of talk about them, but we have to be able to read between the lines. We have to be able to understand what's going on and see the future. The further you see the past, the further you can see into the future. I believe that was a Churchill quote as well. So I appreciate you being here. This is, again, about the FinCen thing. Go, and I'll put the link in here to go right to them. This is, at the end of the day, what are we here for? Are we here for fiat gains in Bitcoin? Are we here to change the world? Are we here to give freedom and prosperity and wealth and property rights to 8 billion people? What are we here for? And I just think about the Founding Fathers a lot. I think about them pledging their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors, as they talked about in the Declaration, and knowing and saying to each other, we must hang together, or surely we will hang separately. 3%, we talk about this. We only need 3% of people to stand up. No one wants to be a martyr. No one wants to be knocked off financially or mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, right? None of these ways. You don't want to be knocked off in any of these ways. No one does. But who is going to stand at the end of the day? Who will band together and stand? Because the faster you do it, the easier it is, the less resistance there is. And the more the people that do it, and the more people that band together, that's why community is so important. The more people that band together and tell the government to get in their place to follow us and not the other way around. Again, remember, the Declaration again noted that very explicitly. I believe it was in capital letters. Maybe it's just the version I have, or one of the versions I have. But the government is there to work at the consent of the governed. That is it. And we have gone way, way beyond that. So I don't want to go much longer here. I appreciate you coming to my TED Talk. Please share this out, because the algorithm hates truth. This is a massive, egregious overreach. And this, again, whether this passes or not, or whether they're trying to do this or not, FinCen is a child of 1964 and the bank secrecy, and them saying, well, this terrorist stuff that's going on in the Middle East, this is why we can't have this stuff here. Like, really? Has that helped anything in the last 20 years? Did you guys protect anything? All the money laundering going on? I mean, the dollar is the biggest money laundering operation there is. So what are we doing here? Stop looking at me like I'm a child, because I think I know something or two about what's going on. And it's up to the people who know, who understand. Freedom. This is about freedom at the end of the day. People can attack me all I want. Attack all you want. But it's freedom. It's people have the right to do what they want to do without hurting others. Period. That's all this is about. That's all America is about. That's the American experiment at the end of the day. That is it. That is it. So I appreciate you. Please voice your concerns on the internet. Go right to the companies who can then have lawyers and bigger teams. They can go talk to these people. Go voice your opinion on the FinCen. I'll try to link to the link here as well. But vote with your feet. Vote with your wallet. And we have the ultimate power. Bitcoin's going to win at the end of the day. Bitcoin's inevitable. The protocol is always going to be there. But will the psychology of human beings be there still? Will we stand now and let freedom ring? Or will we sit silently and idly by and be like sheep, silent led to slaughter, as George Washington said? Please share this out. Question everything with boldness, even the existence of God himself. Trust what I'm saying, but verify. Please verify these things. Question everything with boldness. It's not financial advice. It's freedom advice. Period. I look forward to seeing you on the next one.